So I'm here at Lower Pitcroy today. It's the week of my birthday, and I'm here to have a wee chat to a really good pal of mine and a guy who's fished all over the globe. He's fished in some of the best salmon fisheries, the best trout fisheries, and even the best tench fisheries. But so I'm really looking forward to having a wee chat with Andy Majerus, and I hope you enjoy the wee chat. Andy, so basically, when did you get into fishing, and what was it that got you into fishing, Andy?
I don't remember when I wasn't fishing as a wee kid. We used to live in the outskirts of London, and we'd go down. Mum would drop us off as 5, 6-year-olds and fish the Grand Union Canal, like everyone else, for roach and perch and whatever we could catch. And my father, who was alive then, came from Luxembourg, and we had a forestry there, which had a river, which had some trout and some barbel and stuff, and it was any method went, and everything was eaten.
Yep.
And it kind of went on from there. I went to a public school which had 2 beautiful gravel pits, which we went fishing there, and the Chess wasn't too far.
Okay.
That was the first time I did any fly fishing. And then in my teenagers, I was ill for a time.
Okay.
And laid up in hospital, and somebody, and to be honest, I can't remember who, gave me a Vineyard fly tying kit.
And that got you going with fly tying?
And I became obsessed. I mean, absolutely obsessed. So I didn't really do any trout fish or fly fishing at that time, but I was tying flies almost semi-professionally.
Okay.
Right through to when I went to university, and my father had died then, and I chose the university. I went to Southampton. Right. Well, I didn't last very long. Because of where it was for the fishing.
And what did you study at university?
Well, I didn't.
You didn't?
In theory, I did philosophy, politics, and economics.
Okay.
But I disappeared after a year and took myself to the Orkneys.
Yes.
Where I just fell in love with the Orkneys and ended up staying there for 18 months.
And is that where the big passion for fly fishing came from?
Definitely. For the sea trout and the trout there. And then when I came back, I actually had to hitchhike all my way back to pay my student. Otherwise, I'd have to pay the student grant back. It's a long story. And then I got myself a job as a gamekeeper down on the Avon.
Now, I remember us speaking about the gamekeeping. So tell us a wee bit more about that, Andy. What was the?
Well, it was down at Bicton, which is on the Avon. In those days, we were catching around 150 salmon a year.
On the Avon?
On the Avon,
yeah.
Just one beat.
What time was this, Andy? What was the year?
This would be in early 70s.
Early 70s. Good time for salmon as well.
Well, it was. We were, I mean, obviously the famous beats were Summerley and the Royalty.
Yes.
But Bicton did have a weir.
Okay.
And it was a bit of a barrier.
Yep.
And to be fair, it was mainly prawning and the upstream Devon.
Yeah.
But at the time, because of that, and I was still tying flies professionally, I actually tied a prawn fly, which was weighted, which you could use actually with a nasty bomb and that. And I remember tying 500 of the things, which Lionel Sweet, who was a very famous man
absolutely,
on the
I remember.
sold them at the game fair. And it was, we had a lot of fun. And Derek Davenport and Tony Fordham were making rods at Bicton there.
Right.
So I learned how to make a bit about how to actually.
Were they like bamboo rods, Andy?
No, they did a mixture. It was the start. Actually, it was mainly glass and the
fibre.
Start of carbon.
Okay.
The very start.
So it was kind of mid-70s sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But we had a lot of fun with them.
Yeah.
Just to throw a flyer in, I used to take Gary Glitter fishing there.
Oh, you didn't?
He did. I did. Yeah, he used to come course fishing down there, and I thought he was a very decent guy. I didn't have a problem with him.
It's funny,
but I've been teased ever since about it.
I could well imagine. It's funny how people can hide things quite well.
But I mean, they also had some trout streams there, which were stocked, and a big trout farm. And I met Frank Sawyer, who a lot of trout fishermen would know, and Ollie Kite. And no, that's what made it. And eventually, I left.
Yes.
To get a proper job.
What was your proper job, Andy?
Well, I went into the oil business,
Okay.
and have been in the oil business for 46 years.
So tell me, there'll be a lot of people interested in
Yeah.
this. So what took you from being a gamekeeper to working in the oil business?
One of my drinking buddies in the pub asked if I could take one of his father's friends out shooting. It was July, nothing to shoot apart from bunnies and pigeons.
Yes.
So I took him out, and it was one of those connections, one of those people you meet who you immediately just have a connection with.
Yes, yes.
And I took him out 2 or 3 times, and he sort of said to me, "What are you going to do with the rest of your life?" Because I wasn't educated
Okay.
to be a keeper, which is true enough. And I looked at his pair of purdies, and I looked at his very fancy car, and I said, "Well, Mike, the oil business looks good." And he immediately arranged some interviews in London with some oil companies, and I got a job there, which didn't work out. And I won't go into a long story, but I was in London, had no money, and he offered me a job to go and work for him.
Okay.
And I did that, and the rest is history. I mean, we immediately, so I ran an oil brokerage company with him. And at that time, the Russians had 58 petrol stations in the UK.
Okay.
So they had a big office over here. And the guy who was running that loved to shoot.
Okay.
So I used to take him out every other Saturday. We rented this flat bit of ground. It was hopeless up near Nottingham. And we used to have 2 cars following us, one MI5 and one from the Russian.
Yeah.
And we just went shooting. And instead of doing a 3-year stint, he did a 6-year stint over here.
Okay.
And we had a lot of fun together. You can imagine.
Yes,
I mean, the drink was flowing. They could never stop us from being drunk.
You're a young lad at the time.
I was a very young lad at the time, and we did some very interesting business together.
Yes.
I mean, in parts of the world where maybe the Americans didn't like it, but it was all legal and it was all fine. And that man, when he went back, became chairman of Soyuz Nefta Experts. So he was like the Ministry of Energy in Russia. And he was my friend.
So you had a friend there
so
in high place.
All kinds of doors.
So the doors was wide open to you at that time, Andy.
Yeah.
And so, Andy, was it these doors that and that connections that took you to the cola?
That
because
it helped.
You were okay.
So no, to be honest, I'd heard about the cola.
Okay.
I met a lovely man. He's still a dear friend of mine, Stas Gorbanov.
Yes. Yeah.
Who was involved with a Finnish man called Eero Peterson.
Okay.
Who was more a hunter than a fisherman.
Yes.
And he had the concession for the bears up there, and which he did more to protect them than to shoot them, because the Russian thing was shooting bears.
Yes.
So they invited me to go and have a look, and there was no camp. This was 1990 or 1991. I've been asked that thing, and we were on the Ponoi, and it was just unbelievable.
So was it the same thing, Andy? Fly into Murmansk and grab a helicopter on the way over?
But there was no fancy tents as they are now. We were, and I was not the first year. We were really prospecting and flying with helicopter, looking at one place and the other. The second year, we took a bunch of people, and I only fished for 3 days. I had 99 fish.
In 3 days' time on the Ponoi. Oh my God!
It was unbelievable.
Fantastic.
And it still is.
But I mean, I think that's kind of testimony, really, when I think about it, to the rivers at that time probably hadn't been fished that much, Andy. Certainly not in a sport fishing nature.
Not a sport. They were netted.
They would have been netting, yes.
And in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, absolutely, aye.
But once they got the value of the tourism and the hard currency,
sure,
they were protected.
Yeah,
far better than ours.
Yeah, interesting. It's really,
we didn't have there weren't the green tree huggers.
Yeah,
I mind once or twice a seal did come up the river.
And
they never went back down
to the sea. No chance, because people would have been protecting their interests. They would have seen that it brings in a lot of money that's into the area, and they're protecting their interests.
So I went from the Ponoi, and we arranged for the Ponoi to be sold to Gary Loomis. I mean, it's been sold several times. And then we moved on, and with Stas and some other partners.
Yes.
To the Varzina, which is one of the northern rivers.
Yep.
So
So it was
and they're big fish rivers.
yes,
And not easy. And
hard fishing.
hard fishing, impossible wading.
Yeah.
And non-economic. I mean,
Okay.
to get from
Okay.
one pool to another pool, you have to go by helicopter.
There's no other way you could walk.
No.
No.
It's one or two you are.
I heard that one or two people are now doing this kind of wild hiking and doing some fishing up in these northern rivers. But
Yeah,
I
well,
think
no,
that,
sadly, nobody's going to Russia. You
no,
can't.
no,
you know,
you can't.
Well,
No.
and how long that's going to happen to go
Well,
for, nobody knows.
it's a shame. It's a shame, really. So you ended up in the Cola, Andy, in 1990.
Yeah.
But you were a trout fisher in the 70s.
No, well, all
what
over.
happened?
Yeah.
What happened with the salmon? What took you into salmon fishing during the 1980s? Where was the bridge?
Honestly, it was probably due to fly tying.
Okay.
Because
okay.
I got more and more involved in tying flies, and then I got into tying classic flies.
Okay.
So then you wanted to try them, and let's be honest, I earned a bob or two.
Yep.
So then
Yep. You could afford to.
I met actually through a client, Alvin Farquharson, who had Invercool Castle.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So
yes.
I was invited
Yeah.
to go and stay at the castle and the private policies, and I went there and had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of the gilly? It was a wonderful gilly who put up with my atrocious casting. You know, forget the Spey casting. And we went there, me with my first wife, to be honest, for a few years, and then for some reason, I came over to the Spey and met Gerald Ponchot at Tulkin, and I fell in love with Tulkin, and I don't know, a few years later, I bought the first of two cottages I've had at Tulkin, and I've fished there, as you know,
ever since
for 40 years.
So we're talking about the mid 80s here, Andy.
Yeah.
So the mid 80s till now, now the mid.
Yeah, and then
20s.
we met.
Yeah.
As you well remember, on a very horrendous afternoon.
We did, right in this place.
Right here.
And I remember, funnily enough, taking you to this pool in the background, Andy. It was low water at the time, but we
fished from the other side.
We fished from the other side. You were the first person ever that I know to fish that.
Wade.
It wasn't a good wade, but you had 5 fish. I remember you had 5 fish out of there. And we had a particularly good week that week.
I think we broke your record.
We did.
And my host never caught a fish. Dear Andy Cowan, who is a lovely man. We rubbed it in.
Poor Andy. Poor Andy's had that story sort of rubbed in many times since. But we're actually kind of lucky to be here, but we'll not go into that story.
No.
We'll just leave that one away from it. But
but sadly, over the 40 years,
yes,
the Spey has become a different river.
For sure. I mean,
if it wasn't the fact that I have the cottages, and so I take the beat, and with friends who are wonderful friends, and we have a great time.
You said when I
but
came in
it's embarrassing that the amount of fish you see. It's getting difficult to.
I think for someone like yourself and myself, Andy, it's always going to be a difficult scenario. I think because we have a benchmark, which is a very high benchmark, and it's always difficult coming down from any benchmark. And all you know, because I know that you're the perfect host, one of the most perfect hosts that I know. And all you are concerned about is getting your guest a fish. That is all.
We try.
That's it. So the frustrations, I think, actually come from there. You know, as far as the fish are concerned, for sure, we don't have as many fish here. There's nothing remotely like as many. But on the other hand, there are fish here. And we're still speaking about a wonderful river, but we must take better care of it, in my opinion, anyway.
It's happened in our lifetime.
Yes, it is.
And for various reasons, we can't do what we want.
No.
I reread Arthur Ranson's book, Rod and Line. I know salmon fishing is you're in a state of prolonged expectation. That prolonged is getting bloody long. It's a good
analogy.
Yeah.
And I think as long as, and I've always said, Andy, as long as we go there expecting to catch a fish, the minute that we go there and we don't expect to catch a fish, then it's sad.
I mean, we came up this morning and the river has gone up 3 foot.
Yeah.
It's clear enough. I mean, it's not ideal. And
So,
yeah,
yeah,
I still,
there's always a chance. As my old boss, Sir David, used to say, that Ian, there's always an enchanted
yeah,
moment. He always said that. So I'm going to ask you,
right.
as a salmon, I'm predominantly a salmon guy,
And
Andy. You know, and but I know that you have a background in salmon and a big background in salmon, but also a background in trout.
yeah.
So if you had to pick one of that species, or is it a bad question, Andy?
That's a bad question. It's like people, because I have fished in most places in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone asks me, "Where's the best?"
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
simple.
Yes.
Wherever I'm going tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Simple as
That's a
that.
great answer. It's a great
The
answer.
best trout fishing. I'm 70 next year, and
Yeah.
I probably couldn't get the best out of it anymore. But New Zealand
It was fantastic.
is, stalking those wild grounds in the South
Yeah.
Island.
Yeah.
But it's quite physical.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I said I'm 70.
Yes.
We've had some great times in
Oh,
Iceland.
man alive. Man alive. I mean,
I
incredible.
went to Spain a few weeks ago and found brown trout there, which was superb.
Was that a
I
first
never
time
heard
in
about it.
Spain?
Yeah, I'd never heard about it.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I had some
It was
Spanish
tough
guests.
fishing, and
Yeah.
it was brilliant.
Yeah.
So there are still places.
Sure.
Argentina is wonderful.
Yeah.
I haven't done a lot in the States for reasons I won't go into.
No.
But
No.
I think I told you one time. But anyway. But no,
dear.
between trout and salmon,
Yeah. Each has its place.
exactly.
Each has its
And I
place.
still enjoy tench fishing. I still
Tench fishing?
Yes.
What on earth's tench fishing?
Exactly.
What
You
on
watch a
earth's
red
tench
float.
fishing?
You watch it get up very early. It takes you to beautiful places, and you watch a red float. But no, it's not your thing. But I still do that.
I've got a pal, James Robbins. He's always a very good match fisher, very good course fisher, and he's always at me to come out and see this done. So I'm going to do it. I'm definitely going to do it. Definitely going to do it.
It just takes you to beautiful places, and I
it.
do now. Due to sanctions in my business, I do have quite a lot of free time. So if I'm not fishing, I'm stalking deer.
Okay. Okay.
I do that.
That's a massive passion as well.
Yeah.
I can remember you doing a lot of stalking around this place in the past as well. And the saltwater fishing. Does it interest you?
It does. I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
I had an office in the Bahamas for a time, so I caught more. I spent a lot of time bone fishing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like trout fishing.
Okay.
The rise and the take. After that, they do run like hell. But and I have a place in Kenya, so I do a bit of sail fishing and tuna fishing and bill fishing. But that's holiday fishing.
That's okay. Aye, so it's not.
I'm not great on hurling huge, great budgerigars with single-handed rods. I find it quite tiring. I've caught GTs, and I've done it, and I will do it. But if you ask me, salmon fishing, trout fishing, or
saltwater fishing, then it's trout and salmon all the time. So we're talking freshwater all the time.
I call it holiday fishing, because Mandy normally comes with me, and I do. Still a fishing widow, but
but there you go, Andy. Sometimes you have to earn a few brownie points in life as well. Even the most successful people need the brownie points. So trout and salmon. What interests me, Andy, is that I know quite a few really good trout fishers. You're one of them. And it's really interesting that all the really good trout fishers that I know all become very good salmon fishers in my mind, because I think that there's a certain amount of stealth was the word I'm trying to look for.
My wife has a different version.
Yeah, okay.
She thinks I'm quite a good fisherman because I've got the brain the same size as a fish. But it is. No, I mean, it's one of my pet hates, because trout fishermen, you do.
Yes.
You're fishing for a wild fish.
Absolutely.
And you conceal yourself and everything. One of my pet hates, and you do see it in salmon fishermen.
Yes.
With people who'll go and fish that pool, and they'll walk right up along the bank.
Yes.
With a white hat on or something.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, it just sends me mad.
It does. It drives me crazy as well.
There are wild fish.
There are a totally wild fish. Everything in this river Spey is a wild fish.
We fished I fished the chalk streams for salmon there, where you're fishing with this odd way with a nymph.
Yes.
and you can see once you've scared them,
Yep.
they don't move from their lie, but
Yep,
they go like
but
a
they go-
board. And
that's it,
you've
they're
seen the
stiff
same thing
again.
in Iceland.
Absolutely the same in Iceland. Yep.
And they'll just
No question.
waste your time. They'll never take it. If you leave them, you start seeing the fins move.
Absolutely.
You've got a chance again.
So I think, like all wild things, need to be rested, Andy. You know, I mean, there's no question. Unless we were very lucky for salmon here. We're very lucky in the old days where we had run after run after run coming.
Yeah,
all
I
the
mean,
time, you know.
If you remember, and maybe we shouldn't be mentioning it, but during the COVID year, you and me, you kindly invited me to fish somewhere where it was legal.
Yes.
Just.
Aye.
And I mean, compared with the years before and afterwards,
incredible.
We caught a huge amount of fish.
Yeah, we did, and the fish had been left alone.
Exactly.
Simple as that. You know, and I remember coming to this beat, and I was catching fish out of lies that we hadn't caught fish in that particular lies since Sir David's day, since I used to come here with only one rod. But so that's another story completely. Back to the trout, Andy. So you would, when you're fishing for trout, you would try and emulate what the trout's feeding on. Yeah, for sure. This would be it. You know, this would be trying. And so where I'm going here is that with salmon, how much, and as a salmon fly dresser, and a very keen salmon fly dresser, how much emphasis would you put on the colour and the particular tie-in of a salmon fly, Andy?
Come on, salmon fly tying is an art form.
Yes.
You're not imitating any, well, unless you pick the, you know, maybe you can say a general practitioner.
Sure.
Or whatever. No, the rest it's just folly.
Yes.
It is folly.
Yes. So you do it.
No, I mean, I have, you know, when I fish I've been fishing in Norway, as you well know.
Absolutely.
On the Alta. And I take, how many flies do I? You know, hundreds and hundreds.
Hundreds and hundreds.
How many do I use?
One. but I'm sure the viewers would like to know that one, Andy. So
well, it's I call it a temple dog.
Yes.
It's a Fatagorva.
Yes.
And it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've seen it working many times. Many times. It's worked perfectly for both of us. So so not so much emphasis on fly type, but fly size, maybe fly depth
and
for
depth,
salmon.
Yes, I mean, to my mind, and you're a better salmon fisherman than me for sure. But
I wouldn't say that, Andy,
well, it's the speed of the fly.
Yes.
Depending on the height of the water and the temperature of the water.
Sure.
It's the speed of the fly and the depth of the fly crossing where you think
the salmon's
going to lie.
Yeah. Okay.
It's that either slowing down. The fly mending it one way, or speeding it up, mending the other.
Moving the
and
fly.
Then and sometimes have a so I tie that Fatagorva in all sizes.
Yes.
I tie it on a copper, an aluminium, or a plastic tube. And sometimes you do move it, you strip it.
Yeah.
But that's. And if they miss it 3 times, I might change the fly. But is there a difference between a Marlodge and a Jock Scott and a Popham? I think not.
I would doubt very much. However, if we're going back to trout, that would not be the case.
No, 100% not.
Yeah.
No.
So
the best trout fishing that I love is when a fish, so these big fish, wild fish, are rising, and they will be rising. And honestly, in Iceland, if you haven't got it right,
they're not going to take it.
There's 2 things that absolutely for trout is having the right fly.
Yep.
And drag.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, drag is absolutely a no-no.
Yeah.
I mean, for educated wild fish.
Yes.
And I actually learned. I mean, after 70 years, I was in Spain just recently, and we started using 26-foot leaders.
26-foot leaders.
Yeah, I know. The guy, I mean, he was a master fisherman, a wonderful guy, very enthusiastic. It took me some getting to use them, and it just cut the drag.
Is that right?
These fish would,
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have to cast sort of upstream a bit and let the fly, you've just got a longer
sure.
drift without drag.
Wow.
But hey.
but quite difficult to target
Oh
fish
yeah,
that are
no,
kinda,
it took some
aye, I
to cast,
would have
to learn. It
thought
was a
that.
different way to casting.
Aye. So do you ever get yourself sucked into the dark side, Andy, into the streamer fishing or any of that kind of things?
We have. I mean, everywhere. You know, if you suddenly the river's flooded, certainly not on the not down south. But I like a day on the reservoirs or on
Yes,
Chew
yes. You're
and
just a
stuff.
fisherman,
Aye,
well,
you know.
you're just a fisherman.
Aye.
That's what you are. You're a
Yeah,
fisherman.
yeah,
It
yeah.
likes getting out.
We fished together. We fished
Absolutely.
together in Iceland,
Absolutely.
and we were
Yes.
using streamers there.
Of course, of course.
Somebody not too far from me actually wiped my eye, as you know.
It was a great fish. Mind you, it was a great day, Andy.
Oh,
It was
a day of all
tremendous.
weathers, and
It was
that
amazing.
fish
Oh,
sits above. I had it carving,
yeah.
and it sits above my desk.
A 27.5 pound trout.
Brown trout.
It was pretty amazing.
Caught by a salmon fisherman.
Hooked by a salmon fisherman using salmon gear, using a salmon cast in a big trout lake. It was super.
We've had some
magic
laughs.
fun.
We've had some
Magic
laughs.
fun, pal. Absolutely magic fun. It's been just a dream, to be quite honest. Real dream.
But
anyway, Andy, I'm not going to finish there. I'm going to go. So, having spoke earlier about the Alta River, Andy. I seem to remember some years ago you talking about an incident whereby you caught, was it the same fish? Or
it was.
What was the story?
Well, we used to, there was a period, it was about 20 years ago now, where we used to tag the fish when we caught them.
Yes.
And released.
Yeah.
And I caught the same fish because we used to take the tag out and put another one in. If you caught a fish with a tag, and give it to the management. And he came back and he said, you wouldn't believe it. So I caught the same fish that I had tagged. It was actually 2 years in between.
Oh my God.
So it had been out to sea. And from memory, it was 26 pounds the first time and 38
So it was an
second.
Alta
It still took
normal.
the Fatagova. It wasn't that smart. And it was, and it had a fin clip. So they were introducing, they were doing some smolt releasing then.
On the Alta River?
On the Alta.
Okay.
And it was one of those. And I reckoned in those days, about 10% of the fish we were catching
were fin clip fish.
Were smolts that they had released into the river.
That's really,
it's quite
really
significant.
Interesting. That is.
So and it was really good because it proved to the local people who weren't over keen on catch and release then.
No.
That it actually worked.
Yes.
And then it gets on to the big hatchery
debate,
which, as you know, the same a bit earlier on the Spey.
For sure.
When John Posho owned Tulkin,
it
was the golden years of Tulkin and Castlegar and Balladolphin.
Yeah.
He did put all the smolts back where the hatchery was.
Yeah.
So there was some jealousy in the river about all that, and eventually, for whatever reason, it got closed.
Closed down. I mean, I remember that period, Andy. And what I remember about it here, and this is my exact memory. I remember one of the years I had a Frenchman here that was fishing with me, Mr. Donadieu, and he was adamant that there was no fish in the river. There were no fish in the river at that time. I said, well, how can there be no fish in the river when Tulkin are catching so many fish? No, he wouldn't believe it, you know. So I took him from here in the car, jumped into the car, got to the March pool, having seen nothing here. I mean, virtually no fish. Zero on the gauge, perfect height for here. No fish. Took him up there, and I could not get my breath. I couldn't get. And this is when you guys were catching a lot of fish up there. I mean, compared to
I was
else,
averaging 3 fish a day to my rod in those days. You know, and some days it was better than that.
I mean, that's
whereas and everyone said lower down the river. They started off by saying they're just running through.
Yes.
Well, they weren't. They were going home.
They were definitely going home. There's nothing surer because that's
and when they stopped it, I mean the salmon catch had declined as well.
For sure, and Tulkin, and I think around Tulkin as well. I mean, I remember looking at the figures for it, Andy, and pre, during, and post hatchery, and it's like a top hat. I mean, for me, you know my views on.
Yeah, I know. And certain degree, mine. I mean, I see the same. There's a big debate at the moment down in the chalk streams.
Yes.
which I find so amusing because back in the, I guess it was around the 90s, a wonderful friend who died a long time ago, Alan Mann, bought the house. I was actually, he gazumped me and bought it in front of me, the house, because he wanted the springs.
Yes.
And he reared smolts there, which he put into the Itchen and the test.
Yes.
And it saved those rivers at the time.
So they were right down.
They were absolutely, they had all sorts of problems.
Yes.
And they became great fisheries again.
Yeah. But that's what I think.
They no longer are, and they've gone. I mean, last year, if I think they've got a reliable counter on the Itchen, I think only 155 fish ran on the Itchen.
That's sad.
I
sad
mean,
to see.
And,
sad to hear,
and I hate to say,
honest.
the scientists, I find amusing, because saying that the chalk stream salmon is a subspecies. Well, if it is, I'm not sure how, because certainly Alan, I'm pretty certain not all his eggs.
Yeah,
they were coming from Norway.
I think.
I mean, you know,
yeah,
so
sure,
the DNA of those fish is not a local chalk stream fish.
But nevertheless, they had some years of some very good fish in there.
Oh no, we did.
I think the whole hatchery debate is something that's, it can be contentious for sure. I've spoken about it a lot over the years. I think what we're seeing, particularly on the Dee and to a certain extent on the Spey and various other rivers now, is a population that's
critical.
on its needs, you know, and so
it just needs a helping hand with all the other, goodwill.
Yep.
Of helping the spawning birds.
For sure.
That's all well and good and needs to be done.
Yes.
But I actually think we need to just put some extra fish in the river.
I think so too, Andy. And I think maybe if some fishery owners actually had the handcuffs off and were able to do things like they did in the past, maybe it would be better. But I think the handcuffs are very much on at this moment in time. And there's not much people can do, to be quite honest, Andy. But there it is. So, I mean, you're involved with wildfish, Andy, as well. And so at this moment in time, it's very much a focus on fish farming. It's a big.
Well, to be fair, there's obviously it's sewage.
Yes.
In our rivers.
Yes.
Is the other, and fish farming are our two biggest things.
Yes.
The state of the political state in Scotland.
Yes.
Is really mean. We have been knocking our heads against walls.
Okay.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
The Scottish government do not seem to be interested at all, despite all the what you've been into, all the committee meetings and all their will that they're going to clean it up. They're not going to clean it up at all.
No.
They're going to make bigger farms, maybe a fewer of them, but they'll be bigger and just create more shit. We're trying to persuade restaurants now and companies just not to eat it and to serve it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's something can be done, but
it's a big political hot potato, I would say, Andy. And for the people who kind of know about it and know about the impact on the environment as well, it's kind of sad to see government standing back and basically not doing enough. You know, especially given what we believe fish farms produce around the coastline with regard effluent from each farm.
You've got the effluent, you've got the sea lice problem, and actually just the drugs in the fish.
Yes.
Which eventually end up in our water courses.
Sure.
One way or the other.
Sure. Another thing, Andy, with the wild fish has been obviously the water quality.
Yeah.
And are you seeing any headway in that? Is there anything moving?
Well, I think wild fish, together with various other organisations, you're seeing a lot more media coverage for sure.
Yeah.
How quickly that transfers into actual action, we will see. And I think the election coming up could be quite interesting on that. I think it will be.
Okay.
With the media coverage, things might get done.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
We wonder where the money's gone, and I think it's search the money because the dividends and that the water companies are claiming there's no money.
Well, where is the money going?
Well, exactly.
Where is it going? I remember having a bit of a frank discussion with a water company some years ago when we were talking about this river releasing the Spey, and for sure the boss of that was dodging every question like a bona fide politician, you know. But and we never ever got to the bottom of that one, which is a big shame. I think that's one of that things. So I mean, so that's the two things that wild fish are really involved with. But my chat,
Well,
Andy,
also abstraction and other stuff, but
yeah,
they're the two things that I'm sort of trying to help.
yes,
Whichever way I can.
yeah. And where do you see the future of that, Andy? Do you think there's going to be?
I do wonder in 20 years' time whether we'll be still salmon fishing in Scotland, the way it's looking, unless something's done.
I think you're right. I think, unfortunately, I think you're right. I think it's an
indictment to us, but it is going that way. The Scottish government doesn't seem to want to give a shit.
No,
to put it mildly.
For me, Andy, I just don't see holistic thinking as well. I mean, when I look at the Spey here, and we talked about it earlier as well. I mean, you were fishing at Tulkin some years back, and if we go back to McCorkinsdale's time fishing at Tulkin, how many rods would he have been fishing, Andy?
Well, he fished with 2 other rods.
Yes,
you know, and that was it. And he only fished for 2 months a year.
Yep. And the rest, I mean, if you look at, I can think back to Sir David's time here. And on this beat, I was Gillian. I had 1 rod, or possibly sometimes 2. That was it. That was it, you know. And I remember one time Major Mackenzie coming round and catching 10 fish. But the reason he caught 10 fish was he had 2 from that pool, 3 from this pool, 3 from that, you know, and that was how it worked, you know. That was how the big bags were made in the past.
Just resting
no question.
Just
no
resting
question.
water.
Go and make sure there's water's rested. And I think going forward, personally, I think it's something that I think we could be doing. What's your view on that, Andy?
We can certainly do that, but that's up to the riparian owners.
Yes. I do think that's where I was back to joined up thinking. I do think that the riparian owners really, really do need to get, and their agents and advisors, fishery managers, really need to get their act together with this one for sure. It's something that we can do something about, but at this moment aren't doing that many things around. But
I mean, since nobody's killing fish these days, it's not going to put more fish in the river either.
It's not.
But it'll put less pressure.
It will. For me, it's about the experience. You had when I first arrived today, you said, you know, that fishing hadn't been that good, but I detected a lot of fun with your fishing group, Andy.
No.
And that's, I mean,
that's about the crack, as you know. It has to be these days.
No question. And you have to try and take the best out of it. And for me, I think Scotland has got, and Speyside, Deeside, wherever you go in Scotland, it's got some fabulous places. Massive potential. Personally, I think still potential, but it needs to be managed properly.
As you say, you know, I fished a lot in Russia and in Norway and in Scotland, and people have asked me, which would you?
Yes.
I couldn't give up the Spey.
No.
It'll be the last thing I give up.
Absolutely, me too. You know,
while there is a hope of a pull from a fish.
You'll be here.
I'll be here. You know.
Brilliant, Andy. And I'm going to just I want to leave because I know the viewers will be really interested in the River Alta. And what we were speaking about just now, it's quite kind of interesting as well that when I first went to Alta with you, I remember going up in that boat, and there was like loads and loads of boats. And so the Alta has a particular system of fishing,
lottery and various ways the locals can fish it.
That's it.
At a reasonable price.
Now, I think this is a fantastic way. Personally, I think it's the best, because I think if you're a local in a fantastic river like there, like here possibly, it must be terrible looking on and thinking, oh, this is just for rich people. But in Alta, that's not the case at all.
They can't. Certainly, a number of weeks are.
Yes.
And for whatever, it is expensive.
Yes.
It's also such a privilege to fish that river, as you know.
It is a serious place.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, Andy, what makes it for Alta? I mean, you've got everything there, but when that fly comes round and you feel it tightening up,
You don't know what's taking it.
yes,
I mean,
it
just a
could be,
normal fish
yes,
is a big fish.
it's 25 pounds.
Yeah,
as a normal
mind
fish.
you caught one last year. I think
Yeah.
it was 16 pounds.
16 pounds.
Most
And
beautiful looking fish, and the boatman
absolutely, the boat.
and the boatman
Get that thing.
it shouldn't be in the river. I mean, there's nowhere, pretty much nowhere else in the world.
I don't think
like
so.
It. And
for
yeah,
Atlantic salmon, for sure.
If you're a salmon fisherman, it is the Mecca,
is.
and I've been really privileged to be able to fish it.
Well,
and
as
share
well, for sure. I mean, for me, I never dreamt in my wildest dreams I would ever be fishing there, but it was the kindness of yourself that took me there. But and then I'd be internally grateful for that, for sure. The river itself, I'm just going to go back to that question. The very fact that part of the season is utilised by, and where the river is fished with only 10 rods?
Yeah.
10 rods.
So the first 5-6 kilometres has 10 rods.
Yes.
Which we, on the private weeks, don't fish.
Yes.
We have the rest of the river.
Yeah.
Which is maybe 35 miles or so.
And you fish it with
10 rods.
10 rods.
And we only fish it 7 hours a day.
7 hours a day.
That's it.
For me, this is the perfect, for the key part of the season, this is the perfect way to fish for salmon.
Yeah. Nowadays, you fish it. So every pool, the good pools, get fished once.
Yes, and that's it.
A day, and that's it. And then not even that, because with 10 rods, and some pools don't get fished every day. Yeah, it's the way it is, and it's the way it should be. Ideally,
I think. I mean, looking at that river, Andy, what it seems to be, and what I really like, is that the boatmen, they all get a chance to fish out with this absolute key area, which is about a month's fishing.
Yeah.
But everyone has an equal chance to fish, and landowners have a chance to fish, and it is just a terrific place. But anyway, Andy, as far as stocks of salmon are concerned, do you believe that we are going to have a resurgence in salmon in any time in the future?
Not unless something's done.
No.
Simple as that. I was slightly encouraged this year. I've seen a lot more smolts. Now I am fishing 5 days later because of just the way calendar goes on the Spey, and it was low water until today.
Yes.
So we've been using
Small
Icelandic type,
yes.
Size 16s and 14s. So you are going to catch more, but I've seen more, and I think the boys have been doing the cull for the Mergansers quite well the last 2 years. They've taken it seriously.
Yes, that's good.
So that's one thing.
I think
the other predation problems we're not going to get to grips with, sadly, because of just the way it is.
No, unfortunately, that'll never happen again. And so, as far as I can see, that all we can do is maximise the smoke production from these rivers. That's all we can 100%. Do. There's nothing more we can do. There's loads of things. I could talk all day, Andy, to be quite honest. There's loads of things, but I reckon we're probably up to about an hour on this thing already. and we know how it all goes, you know.
Yeah.
And look, I'm still on my Negroni.
I know, well, yeah.
But
I normally only have them in the evening. What the hell?
I'm going to see the nurse. She's going to be happy with me.
Anyway, cheers, buddy.
Andy,
it's good to chat.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Really.
And you're fishing with me next week.
Armadillo. Can't be bad, eh? Cheers, pal.
Cheers.
Oh, well, how about that then? All over the world, fished countless places, but at the end of the day, if he was to give up every other river, this would be the last one. The River Spey, a majestical place and loved by so many people.